All right, take three. So, welcome back to Critical Weight Theory, where I sometimes explore the systems we've built and the ones that now control us. Today's episode: industry, power, and the immense human cost. So, we're looking a little bit at the forgotten purpose of industry. Let's start with a thought from Rudolf Rocker, a political thinker who lived through the industrial age and saw firsthand what happens when machines start defining man instead of serving him. So he wrote, quote, "People forgot that industry is not an end in itself, but should only be a means to ensure man's material subsistence and to make accessible to him the blessings of a higher intellectual culture." End quote. In other words, the point of industry was never just production for production's sake. Factories, trade, profit, all of it was supposed to serve human well being, but over time, the flipped script became realized. Rocker warned that when industry becomes everything and man becomes nothing, we enter what he called economic despotism, a tyranny of money and machinery as cruel and dehumanizing as any political dictatorship. The corporate machine, in other words. So, fast forward a century, and we're living in the world that Rocker feared. As capitalism expanded, corporations stopped being just tools of production. They became living entities of their own, with rights, power, and global reach. Marx and Engels saw this coming too. In Capital, they noted that the power of an individual capitalist is dependent upon the ability of his corporation to invest capital in industrial enterprises or something like that. And I know that's not really a bumper sticker slogan, it's not like a catchy, all time classic quote, but nevertheless, it really gets to the heart of the matter. In plain terms, whoever owns the machines owns the world. And when corporations generate wealth, that wealth doesn't flow to everyone, it moves upward to the owners, their agents, and the people who orbit their power. That's what we now call crony capitalism, an ecosystem where connections matter more than contribution, and competition exists only to be crushed. And this leads to what is sometimes called diseconomies of scale. We've reached a point where growth itself has stopped working the way it used to. Economists talk about diseconomies of scale when production costs actually rise as companies grow bigger. It's an idea that applies to more than just factories. When systems get too big, that's governments, corporations, digital networks, whatever, they start to fail under their own weight. They stop serving people and start feeding on them. And this has also led to something that we call surveillance capitalism. Basically, now the machine has eyes. According to a 2020 Pew Research report, one expert warned, and I'm quoting, by 2030, as much as 75% of the world's population will be enslaved by artificial intelligence based surveillance systems developed in China and exported around the world. End quote. Now that might sound a little bit paranoid, but how paranoid is that really? I mean, some people would actually agree that we're there already. Basically, I mean, it's not too crazy to think that's a possibility. So think about that. The surveillance systems going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every click, purchase, and movement tracked, stored, analyzed. It's not science fiction, it's the logical endpoint of an economy that values efficiency over empathy and data over dignity. Admittedly, I rarely ever clear cookies from my computer, so it's a bit odd for me to express these concerns. Might be construed as hypocritical and odd. But this is an accurate picture of what's happening nonetheless, regardless of how the messenger uh, behaves. It's bigger than me, is what I'm saying here. So activists in Brazil managed to implement the idea of zero hunger. It was a social program built on a simple idea that no one should go hungry in a world of abundance. It's more than a policy, it's a reminder. Human needs should come before corporate profits, people before production. Murray Bookchin once wrote that in early societies, quote, property of any kind, communal or otherwise, had yet to acquire independence from the claims of satisfaction, end quote. In other words, the purpose of ownership was to meet ends, not to accumulate power. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. And we have a choice ahead. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. It's a little bit odd to quote Thomas Jefferson, but nevertheless, he was accurate when he said, educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Now, of course, he was abusing slaves and whatnot. He even had a child with an underage slave, and he was not a perfect being in other ways, but nevertheless, his point about educating the people is definitely valid, and that's really the path forward. If Rocker, Marx, Bookchin, and Jefferson share anything, it's this: they all saw that freedom depends on awareness. Industry, capital, technology, they're not necessarily enemies, despite all the things that I just said here. They're tools. But when the tools start using us, when production replaces purpose, we drift toward a world where economic despotism isn't just a metaphor, it's reality. The question is, will we remember that the machine was built for us, not the other way around? That's really the question of our time. Do we own the economy, or does the economy own us? Do we own the political system, such as it is, or does it own us? Basically take any abstract collectivist entity that you could care to think of and ask that same question in a somewhat reworked version. And that's really the path forward, is for people to ask that sort of question. So, on that note, if you enjoyed today's episode, share it, rate it, and most importantly, keep questioning these systems that we live inside of.